All right, we have the honor of bringing on my favorite person in marketing and advertising. She's somebody I've learned the most from. She's one of the smartest people I know in the advertising marketing industry. And she is my own personal mentor who helped me get started in the ad business. I want to like to introduce Trisha Blake to the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's fun. Anytime you need something, James, I'll answer your call.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Well, we're all about stories on this podcast. This is the Agency Download podcast, and it's all about stories and experts in the advertising market. And we just like to get started off with just understanding who you are. Tell us how you got into the advertising marketing industry and what you're doing today.
Sure. I lucked into my first gig where I worked for an agency that was in the middle of building the campaign, which you're familiar with. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So that was kind of like my luck right out of college working there. And that catapulted me into working with some big hospitality brands like MGM Resorts, Cirque du Soleil, and kind of the reinvention of Vegas being more of an entertainment destination. And so I was the head of media for MGM Resorts during a major boom in Las Vegas. And then I just wanted to try like something else. And I started going down a path of how do I help the world and communities and what is it like advertising for people and telling them where they can find resources and support versus selling them something. And so that's where I met you. And when I was the head of media for a really small agency. And then I went on to do my own thing. And I obviously have a couple companies now, but I did spend a little bit of time in the nonprofit world, which was a blast. And it taught me so much about resources and passion for what you do. And that kind of really reinvigorated my business and helped me focus on how do I make an impact in the world for profit and nonprofit clients.
Yep, absolutely. And you've worked across so many things. You've done big resorts and all the Las Vegas scene. You've worked across ad agencies. Like you said, you've done nonprofits. What would you say is like a defining moment that really kind of geared where you wanted to take your career and what you're really passionate about in advertising marketing?
I think I'm passionate about like the bleeding edge of marketing and media. Like I always want to try the thing that everyone's scared to try. And maybe it's my ADHD talking, but like I like that unknown and I like someone to tell me no. That's super motivating to me. Like you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna do that. And so and I think that you've been a part of that journey with me is like you have that same spirit of just trying to figure it out before everyone else does. So we were building tech stacks before tech stacks were cool, and now we're like rebuilding our tech stack because our tech stack isn't cool anymore, and
Yep.
so it's just that's the game of media and marketing. And I think you find a lot of like-minded people in that space because that's what we all signed up for it, not just to like, sign insertion orders or load a campaign into a system.
Yep, absolutely. I think two of the biggest things I've learned from you is the figure it out mentality, which I remember early story, you're like, if somebody asks you to wrap the Empire State Building, you better start getting on the phone and calling everybody you can, figure out how you could deliver on wrapping the Empire State Building.
Love that. Yeah, I love when they challenge that, where they're like, what can I've had so many clients where I was like, okay, I'm going to do, they wanted, one a client wanted to do an escape room in San Francisco. I had absolutely no idea how to do an escape room in San Francisco, but I called every escape room in San Francisco to ask them if they would help me. And I found like MIT's like chief puzzle officer girl, and she helped me build this like escape room for a client. And we held it for a weekend in San Francisco. And it just was like, that's the kind of figure it out that I love.
Yep, absolutely. That and being open to the change in technology. And so, like, if you're open to technology changes and willing to figure out any solution, I think you can do really well in this. Um, where do you kind of see is leading off of that as kind of that's the foundation to solve any problems? But what do you see as like the biggest problems or challenges you're experiencing or seeing in the marketing advertising business or your clients are?
I think clients are obsessed with accountability without understanding strategy. And so I think that we've like, with a lot of the new technology, we've like made it more efficiency based and less strategic. And so I think the tech stack is kind of resetting so that because right now then we've given a lot of our control over to the walled gardens, and I think we gotta get that control back and be the central strategist of our audiences and who we're trying to reach versus letting each channel try to manage us. And I think it's missing that, like, planning element, like, how do we get back, the thinking part back to the agency side?
Yep, absolutely. Just from a media environment perspective, what we're always dealing with that our clients are always asking us about is what's the unified reach and frequency that I'm hitting
Yeah.
my audience with? And when we have separation between the walled gardens, the open internet, and we're really big believers in buying both, is how do you connect all those dots? I think is the biggest challenge from a paid media perspective right now.
Yeah, and, we're working on a product to try to solve that, and I hope others are working on similar products because I think it's necessary for innovation right now in media. And our product's Tentra, but the ultimate is starting with that audience first and making sure they're actual people and that the privacy is protected, and then pushing it out to all the different channels so that you know that you're reaching that unified person so that when it comes back, you're not getting fragments of different audiences that are telling you performance. You're getting that same audience and you know how they did in each channel.
Yep, exactly. I think that's huge, and that's gonna be a development that's gonna be very, very much needed right now, and in the future as things continue to be more fragmented and siloed, is gonna pay out dividends for a lot of big brands and advertisers. Tell me
Yeah.
about any type of like, campaign or strategy that you worked on, where you think really kind of excelled or showed like who you were as a person and what you really brought to the table. Like, what's a success story that really stands out to you?
Oh, well, that's tough. I think there's a lot of good ones, but I really loved being a part of the opening of, the Beatles' Love Show was really fun, like, working with, like, an iconic brand and then bringing it to life for new audiences with Cirque du Soleil and kind of their brilliance because that took, like, an international flair to it. That was super fun, and why I loved it is it just involved, not only some really smart people, but it involved how do you do things in a public space that of an old brand and bringing it back to life? And you're seeing that now as a lot of old things are coming new with branding and marketing, and so that was fun. Recently, though, um, I would say a lot of the stuff that I do for like nonprofits because they have such limited resources, being really smart with how you manage their CRM systems and bringing that into the play into play and how it's really hard. You have to do the same amount of steps whether you're spending $5 or $500 million. And so where I think I test my skills is when I have $5 to spend and how smart I can be with it.
Yeah. How well can you do with limited resources? I
Yeah.
think is a challenge across many different markets. Many different people can understand that feeling of how can we maximize what we get with little? Because it's easy, not always easy, but it can be. You have a lot more flexibility when you have $100 million budget versus a $500,000 budget or $100,000 budget.
Yeah, and we do work with like the big brands and the Procter and Gambles of the world. They always are buttoned up. But then the nonprofits of the world, it's like, they don't you're filming on your phone and honestly, their campaigns do well because they're authentic. And I think that's the key is like we all spend all this time doing strategy and trying to be perfect, but I think right now what's winning with AI trying to take over our lives is how do you like reach real people with an authentic message?
Yep, absolutely. And with those different opportunities, whether it's working with nonprofits or bigger brands, like you mentioned, it's the same approach that you have to take for a $500 million project as a $5
Yeah.
project. Can you just quickly break down like what's your thought process anytime you receive a new campaign or objective, or client? What's your creative process that you go through to solve their problems?
Well, I think the client always has an idea of what they think they want, but I always try to like test that against what their goal is because I think they sometimes don't do the full strategy, right? They just want the results and they know it has worked in the past. But sometimes with our market always changing, I kind of look at the market and say, okay, what's going on right now? And how do we have to adjust like who we're targeting, how we're going about it in the front end because it changes constantly, whether TikTok's banned or not banned, or, Meta's released some new restrictions. I mean, it just depends on the client, but we have to kind of navigate all of those market factors and then build the audience and work with the creative teams to make sure that all that lines up, because it's easy to be, oh, it's the media's fault, or oh, it's the creative's fault. Like, it all has to like work together. So I just kind of try to get ahead of that and meet early with creative and get them and us working together.
Yep, absolutely. So we see it all the time, especially when we're buying open internet ads and walled gardens, is
Yes.
that there's this constant change and evolution of one is just time spent, where are people spending time, and we're seeing this huge rise in connected TV time spent. So how are we adapting our media budgets and our creative to fit that? And then we also at the same time are experiencing really this crunch on targeting and data
Yes.
capabilities because all of the big walled garden, all the big ad platforms are all dealing with this pressure from government and consumers of don't use my data, removing data. So we have this there's a huge gap in the market that we're really seeing of targeting more defined audiences. Broader audiences are working a lot better on Meta and a TikTok ad platform, but there's a lot of clients, especially more branding focused, that are just focused on no, I just want to reach my target audience. I don't want to reach a broad audience or let the algorithm always define who the ad's getting served to. I want more control. So I think that's always a balance is like how much control are we giving to the ad platforms versus media buyers, marketing strategists that are really defining and pointing the ship towards where it needs to go.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that we have to pay attention to like what are some of the new tactics those wall gardens are using to try to like improve your performance kind of artificially, right? Like, we were, I think, early discoverers of, like, Facebook was listening to us, and we
Yeah.
remember that was, like, our road show in the early days of telling people about it. I felt like I was, like, preaching it to everybody, and now it's, like, commonplace, everyone knows they're listening, but sometimes that's not great for marketers because you could be having conversations in a negative way, and then they're starting to serve you ads, or you've already bought the product, and there's no way for them to connect that dots, you're wasting money. And I think that's really interesting with travel because we have a lot of travel partners and clients, and the retargeting after you've left the destination or after you've like made the purchase, and
Yep.
just connecting all those dots and wasting money and also bothering people because they don't really want to be fed ads for things after they've already, gotten back from something.
Yeah. From my experience, a lot of people don't mind ads if they're targeted and relevant. And that's what's so
Right.
funny about this whole situation is like people don't want, you know, I understand the cross of line of data, but you also want relevant ads. You don't want irrelevant ads. It's a lot more enjoyable when you receive ads. And I think that's what Meta historically has done really well in the Facebook and Instagram platform is they've served ads that people are it's relevant to people's interest, and that's why they perform better. And I think that's also a challenge for the open internet is how do we get more relevant ads across different mobile apps, connected TV, audio ads, and that's kind of an ongoing challenge. But just a quick story on that of the targeting and algorithm is we have a client that wants to just target parents that are 21 to 49 that have kids. Well, they're advertising on a platform. I won't say which one, not one of the biggest ones, but a social media platform. And their algorithm and all their advice was to target 65 plus because the engagement was higher with 65 plus. But then the day, the client, all they wanted to reach was parents under 49. It did not matter that the algorithm found that grandparents thought their ads were cute and watched their videos more. So there's this balance between like, do we just want to chase engagement metrics or on platform metrics, or do we want to focus on actually reaching the core audience that the campaign's intended to reach?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a valid point of why we can't just let the platforms run things. Is because it isn't necessarily matching the strategy because it's just trying to meet its end goal, which is engagement or whatever it thinks is valuable, where your client maybe has a different opinion and they know their product, or maybe they want to break into a new audience, so they don't want the algorithm to push it to that audience that they already have. And so I think that's important too, is that we have to be like, the original intention of media was to manage all of these media buy, these media vendors and really make sure that their clients got the most out of each product. And I think a lot of those vendors have went around the media agencies and said, "Hey, we can do this better than your agency. We got you. Our algorithm does X, Y, and Z." But then they remove that like safety and that security of watching out for them. So
Yeah.
I think that there's
Now,
like a balance that needs to like kind of reset.
yeah, we're really watching over algorithms now at this
Yeah.
point. It's watching over
And their
algorithms less
algorithms
the
are
vendors.
always like awry. Like they go
Yeah.
outside your geo and like, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just add a plugin to support that. Well, the plugin doesn't listen. And it's like you're constantly fighting or all the little things that happen in your campaigns a day. A ad gets rejected, and you have to go fight that fight for 'em, and there's no one to talk to, so you're fighting with some, like, chat bot in another country, and so I think that's really the nuance is having that person on the front lines that, like, has your back and is making sure your campaigns are running because there's so many things that break, and there's so many things that go wrong, not just with the algorithms, but with just, links and APIs and all the things, and so I think you gotta get back to media being the watchguard and, like, really, like, j it's worth it because you're gonna have more efficient campaigns. I think agencies just need to do a better job of, explaining their role and the new role in the new kind of tech stack.
Yep, absolutely. That's what we talk a lot about is media buying now is a balance of humans and machines working
Yeah, and it's
together.
a good balance. You want
Yeah.
both. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of this stuff by hand, because we didn't have it, and it's so awesome to have, like, that support. It makes your job better, but you still have 15,000 steps. All it does is add other steps that you have to double check things.
Yep. Done are the days, well, for the most part, where you could just sign an IO and then it just runs because it's on a billboard or it's on a TV. Now it's just
Yeah,
an
I would love
ongoing battle. That
Can
is,
we go back
it's
to that? Because that would be the best. I mean,
hopefully one day, but I don't think we can ever take our eyes off the algorithm and, like you said, all the different
yeah.
15,000 problems that can happen when you allow 24/7 media and ad platforms to run dynamic ad insertions. It's just, there's too
Well,
many variables that go wrong.
people have changed, right? So that we used to live simpler lives and we got the newspaper and or we watch TV and like we had more consistent behavior. Now everyone's behavior is so distinct for themselves. Like there's that individuality. And so planning media, that's where the algorithms are helpful is that you can have a campaign that can insert into different lives, but you have to be like have that strategic planner that is watching all of that because they'll just waste impressions for whatever they think is important. And that's where I think and then in top of that, they have their own data in their, like, walled gardens that isn't necessarily who you wanna reach in all the other channels. So, I think really starting with the audience first matters because then you can track it on the back end of how did that go.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of agencies and brands kind of need to take a peek under the hood and understand the intention of the big walled garden ad platforms is that they control the entire ad ecosystem. They
Right.
are the buyer. They represent the buy side and they represent all ownership of all of the inventory. So they represent the sell side. It would be the equivalent if you went to a realtor and he was selling his own house to you and he was representing you as a buyer. Whose interest is he going to be in? Is he going to be in the interest of the buyer or is he going to be in the interest of the seller? Of course, he's in the interest of his own selling ability. So he's going to try to maximize the sale. The same thing happens with Google ads and Meta ads and TikTok ads is they represent the sale. Their goal is a sales organization to sell you media. So they're going to make sure that they do whatever they can to deliver as much budget as possible. And it is not always about are they reaching your right audience? Of course, they can't completely flop, otherwise you wouldn't go back to them. And their platforms do work, but it just raises the point of as media buyers and marketing professionals, we have to be smart with how we watch over and maintain where the media buy is going. Otherwise, you just allow this sales agent to just deliver and spend all your money without any accountability.
Yeah, like the equivalent of a fox guarding the hen house, like, what? You need someone in between those 2,
Yep.
like, animals, so I think you're right. I also think we need to get better metrics on, like, what is, like you said, across all channels, because every channel wants to claim 100% of everything, and that is a lie. And it's always been the case in media, uh, your out of home thought that they drove all the sales, or if you ran print or TV, like, everyone's always tried to claim it. But that's the reality is like we're too dynamic of people, and the way we like consume media for one channel really to be the soul. It might be the last click, but that's where I think I always have a fight with ROAS and, clients wanting ROAS to be the accountability metric. And that can be very stressful because there's a lot of things that are come into play. And so that's where you end up with the walled gardens and some of those guys that are great last click places that aren't necessarily the reason why your sales are growing.
Yep, absolutely. That and how you end up with 40% of time spent is on walled garden platforms, Facebook,
Mhm.
Instagram, TikTok, but 80% of the ad spend is on those platforms versus 60% of time spent is on connected TV, audio, web, apps, but only 20% of ad spend is going on those channels. And it's all because of the discrepancy of, I think, the last click attribution where
Mhm.
all of the credits going to the last click, whether that's Google search or a Facebook ad, is getting all the credit, and so people overinvest in those channels because of that. But what ends up happening is you get inflated costs because it still is a supply and demand economy, and
Absolutely.
you have fixed supply and more demand. Your price and your costs are going to go up, and that's what we've seen: 100% increases in CPMS year over year, especially for more performance-driven advertisers.
And that really is tough for the little guy, right? Because the prices go up for everyone. It's not just the big corporations. The big corporations go and do deals with these groups and set their prices. So who gets hurt by this like lack of strategy is people don't have unlimited funds. And so
Yep.
if they are concerned about accountability, then I think having a media company support you and really focus on the right metrics and not just so obsessed on like, okay, like they're everyone's obsessed with understanding each channel, and I agree, like, you need to understand each channel's performance, but you have to look at the bigger strategy and who you're trying to reach, and then look at the whole. Because 'Cause I've seen correlation between running a connected TV campaign or an audio campaign, and then that last click driving up. So is
Yep.
it then the walled garden that gets the credit or the search that gets the credit? Of course. But there is correlation because that's how we are as people. We're
Right.
influenced by multiple channels.
Yeah, I just read a study that analyzed 500,000 campaigns, and there was about a 250% to 600% increase in performance outcomes when running a multi-channel campaign. That wasn't just isolated to one individual channel, and it makes so much sense when you take a look back because of people's media exposure is so dynamic and so
Yes.
fragmented. People are not just spending all day only on Facebook or only on Instagram. They're spending time watching connected TV. They're spending time in the car listening to Spotify and Pandora. They're spending time browsing the internet or looking at mobile apps, etc. So there's just a lot more opportunities to engage, and all of those media moments serve pay dividend if you measure it the right way. So I think
Yes.
that's hard. Is the measurement though has to catch up to the media fragmentation, and I don't think we're quite there yet. There's some solutions out there like a kind of ghost measurement strategy where you measure each individual ad channel with against ghost ads, and then you can see the outcome of each individual one. There's some ways to doing it, but it's not full bulletproof, I don't think yet.
Yeah, and I think as media companies, we need to be questioning this and having more conversations around it and coming up with solutions, even if they're not perfect, because ROAS and last click are not the solution. And I I know there are some companies working on it, but, like, also the channels themselves morph your audience once you send them in. So, like, how do you really manage a campaign if you don't have someone in there managing it or you don't manage the data going in? And I think that's where clients need to work closely with agencies and say, "Okay, how do I don't give them every obstacle known to man and then be like, "You gotta succeed." Like,
Yep.
how do we, like yes, there's always gonna be imperfect environment for launching a campaign, but can we have a couple, like, must-haves? Like, maybe there's if it was perfect, here's these 5 things we need. Okay, can we have 3 at least? Because I can't tie my arms behind my back and then expect it like, then it's just gonna look like the search campaign won or, the social campaign won because they're last click.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Okay, I like to call this the advice you'd give. If you could give yourself your younger self entering the advertising or marketing industry, what's one piece of advice that you'd give yourself?
Continue to learn, be curious, and, um, don't be afraid to question the system and look for new solutions. The fun of marketing is that our jobs change every day and we get to work on new things. So I think just be super curious about what the future looks like and just try it because like everyone's going to want you to be accountable and it goes back to what I always say, figure it out and then CYA, cover your ass, like make sure that while you're on the curiosity journey that you have good steps for accountability. But that would be my advice. It's my original advice to myself and to
Yeah.
you.
It's worked out well. It's paid dividends for me, and it is in
Good.
my principles list that every single employee that comes on board and works with us has to read over and has to understand. So,
I think that was your first day that we worked together. I was like,
yeah,
here's all you need to know. Is figure it out and cover your ass. And so I think, yeah, that goes back to curiosity. Like continue to challenge the norms because that's our job as like media people is to figure out the next thing and to really follow people with where they're headed before they even realize they're heading there. So that's my advice.
that and I just wouldn't say don't lead with we're professional stalkers because that might freak some people out.
I mean, we are kind of professional stalkers. It's funny. My grandfather was in the CIA and he was an analyst. And I kind of wonder, like, am I in media because of him? Like, he made me like a professional stalker, but just like in a like legit way that I can talk about. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
in a business way, less of a spy
Yeah. Like,
way. Yeah,
I'm like, is this passed down this like pattern recognition, So
there's
probably,
something there for sure.
probably.
So, what keeps you going? What excites you for the next chapter that you see the advertising and marketing industry going in?
Oh, wow. I think battling the, like, walled gardens is kinda fun. I'm excited about that just because I think we gotta take the power back from, like, just the efficiency model that we have running right now, I guess is the best way to say it. So, it gets me up in the morning because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, not that they're bad, but, like, my job is the watch guard." So, like, I gotta be ahead of where they're headed and, like, figure out how do I put safeguards in for my clients and my friends that I'm working with to help them know, like, where we're going.
Awesome, amazing.
Yeah.
All right, closing thoughts before we wrap up. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience? Any last piece of advice? Any resources that you love using? Anything else that you're seeing in the industry right now?
I think just keep like talking to each other. I think we're not doing enough of that. We've kind of like all think we've figured it out. But the best part of media, and I remember in the beginning, is like those people you grew up in the industry with, like you and I, like we talk to each other and like we teach each other things. And I think I love that about this culture of media is that you have those people you've known for like 20 years and you can call them and be like, "Hey," and you tell me all the time like, "That's not no, we're not doing that doesn't make any sense." And I think that we got to do more of that instead of just like, "Oh, we got it all figured out," cuz I don't have it all figured out. I'll tell you.
Absolutely. We everybody kind of sees something in a different way that I think we could grasp or learn from. I've always had a mentality of every single person knows something that I don't,
Yeah.
and I can learn from them. And I think when you approach with that, you kind of humble yourself to be willing to ask the question, to ask for help, ask for advice, etc.
Yeah, and I get people call me all the time that aren't clients or just friends that need something and I happily share it. I know you do that as well. I mean, it's not all transactional. It's like, hey, I just want to learn. And I think that makes great business partners, but at the end of the day that's really why I show up is like I want to help other people like figure it out.
Yep, absolutely. Right on. Well, to end it off, where can people learn more about you, about your businesses, etc.?
Well, check out thetentra.com. That's a new technology we're building to support media and it's that audience first approach. But I think you can also look me up on LinkedIn, Trisha Blake, and I have several companies that maybe you may want to connect with me on.
Awesome. Appreciate your time, Trisha. Thank you so much.
Thanks.